All right, should I get started? I think there's some folks coming in now. All right. So I'm going to kick it off. We're so thrilled that everyone is able to join us today to discuss our latest announcement of our MongoDB API called SingleStore Kai. Before we get into the details, I would like to briefly introduce myself and our two other speakers on the call today. I'm Marissa Zolbler. I'm the Strategic Account Executive at SingleStore for Financial Services. Along with me, Sarang Tripathi, who is the Global Head of Pre-Sales at SingleStore, and Michael McCarthy, who's the Data and AI Sales Leader at IBM for the Americas. And just to level set, just about SingleStore for the folks that might not know who we are, and we'll get into more detail a little bit later, but SingleStore is a cloud-native database built for speed and scale to power real-time applications. Our innovative database enables you to simplify your data architecture while delivering the ultra-fast speed and elasticity and scalability needed to really create that breakthrough experience. And in May, we announced the launch of our SingleStore Kai API for MongoDB, which is a new API that turbocharges real-time analytics on JSON data for your MongoDB applications. So in really this new era of ever-increasing adoption of AI, really making analytics real-time and actionable has been more imperative. And a vast majority of the data accumulated in the world today is in JSON format. And MongoDB databases to store and process JSON data are really powering a variety of use cases across financial services and other industries. And one of the reasons why we teamed up with IBM and why we did this webinar with them is because of our strong partnership we have in the financial services space and the value it brings. And the partnership that IBM brings to the table is really that single unified experience, the strong integration capabilities and global presence to improve the value provided by SingleStore. Really that one-stop shop for a single source of procurement, support, security, and governance for the SingleStore database. And really the joint customers that we have can come to IBM to accelerate that time to value, improve ROI with that ultra fast analytics, and help them power data-intensive modern apps, which is enabled by SingleStore. And what we'll talk about today and within the next 60 minutes is more about the API, SingleStore Kai, and how it provides 100 to 1,000 times faster analytics and vector functionality for AI for those MongoDB applications. We'll also talk through some use cases for financial services and really be able to see that SingleStore Kai API in action. So I'm going to go and pass it over to Sarang to lead the discussion and dive into SingleStore Kai in more detail.
Thank you, Marissa. That was a great introduction. As Marissa mentioned, I am Sarang Tripathi, Global Head of Solution Engineering here at SingleStore. So what we're going to do, just given the audience, given the nature of of the folks on the call, we're going to focus in on financial services just to start and talk a bit about where SingleStore plays in the space. So if you can just kind of look at what SingleStore is and sort of as a broader offering. We give our customers the ability to ingest, transact, analyze, contextualize, and serve data up to their consumers. We do that by being a database that combines both transactional and analytical workloads in a single table type. And the slide here that you can see focuses in on financial services and how we accelerate financial services applications. So just for example, here you can see on the side. We can consume market data, consumer transactions, mobile banking apps, third-party financial APIs. And these are just a few examples of how our customers are using us today. So if you take a market data, for example, you have folks like Goldman Sachs using SingleStore to ingest market data for wealth management dashboards, which you can sort of see on the right side of this this diagram. If you look at third-party financial APIs, you have a company called IEX Cloud who's consuming broad ranges of public financial data and serving up via real-time APIs that respond in milliseconds through multiple delivery channels to their end customers. And the data that SingleStore can ingest and support and serve in an analytical fashion can be batch, it can be real time, can be structured, it can be unstructured. So what we're going to focus today on is unstructured data, things like JSON specifically, but other types of unstructured data that we can support are time series, geospatial, and then of course structured data just in simple relational formats. Another point to make here is that SingleStore can be deployed on-premise in the cloud as a self-hosted or as a managed offering, and of course in Kubernetes. We support Kubernetes, OpenShift, and several other ways of deploying as well. you sort of look on the right side here, again, the types of applications that we're supporting with SingleStore are those customer-facing, won't wait consumers, as well as the internally facing, can't wait consumers. So you have people like you and I that are using customer-facing apps, like our mobile app for our bank, or dashboards to look at what's going on, with our mortgage, for example, or wealth management. You have internally facing dashboards that customers, like yourselves, might be using Tableau, using Power BI, using other technologies like that, using Cognos in the IBM portfolio, or anything in the Cloud Pak for Data portfolio, for that matter. And then, of course, serving that data up via partner-facing, APIs, data services, online marketplaces for data. So this is just in a nutshell, how our customers and prospects are sort of considering and using us for their financial and fintech applications. So just to lens into some of those customers I was talking about, and the use cases that we're discussing. So our customers in the financial services and fintech industries are using us for a broad range of use cases, anything from portfolio analytics, wealth management, real-time dashboarding, serving up their data marketplaces, really across all of financial technology. So it could be capital markets, banking, payments, lending, and financial services. And you can see here on the side, I think one of the coolest thing about being a part of the journey here at SingleStore and working with customers is that you see companies on a broad range of scale across the financial industry. You see folks like American Express, Goldman Sachs, Royal Bank of Canada, stalwarts in the industry that have been around for a very long time and continue to innovate at a very fast pace. You also see folks like IEX Cloud, Digital Asset Research, Questrade, that are disruptors of their own industries and are really, sort of turning the face of fintech on its side and looking at things through a different lens and really accelerating the rate of innovation, leveraging things like unstructured data analytics, generative AI, real-time analytics in their financial applications. Just a few examples here. We have a bank doing 50 millisecond real-time fraud detection on the swipe of credit card data. We also have a customer doing 40,000 users concurrently looking at portfolio dashboards with millisecond responses. So that sounds familiar to you. These use cases could be interesting, and we'd be happy to give you more information about how we are able to scale to that large of concurrency and support super complex queries of users globally trying to run their analytics and AI applications. So just another specific use case about a customer. We have Bank of America here, who realized $40 million in annual savings while also reducing time to market for new applications. So 30% of all mainframe traffic now goes to SingleStore IBM, and we're able to support 1 millisecond response on hundreds of millions of queries per day at Bank of America. So happy to share more about that in the future. So let's dig into the main topic at hand today that we're all really here to discuss, which is our SingleStore Kai MongoDB API. But before we get deep into the offering itself, let's just talk about the elephant in the room, if you will. Why is Mongo successful? Why are JSON databases, unstructured databases, successful? The real reasons here are the simplicity and ease of use, especially for net new application builds. You have an application that you're trying to build. It's got data from everywhere. Some of it's structured, most of it's unstructured. You just want to throw it in documents and serve up your application. You have all the flexibility in the world. You have an API for handling BSON, JSON, super easy to use, and available sort of at the drop of a hat to use. And they're drivers for nearly every programming language out there, which is great for the Mongo developer community. Now, this is really how Mongo got the appeal and the adoption amongst developers. Now, a bit about the challenges. Now, we talked about the benefits of using JSON, using document databases just in general for your applications. The challenges here are that these document databases are not built for complex analytics like a relational database would be. And I think that's a common thing that people are starting to realize, is that I built my application. It's fantastic. It's serving my customers great. But now I want to do a little analytics on that data. And all of a sudden, I have to move that data to an external solution. That external solution could be a data warehouse. It could be Postgres. It could be really anything, but it's not the document database. This makes document databases very sort of unsuitable for real-time and advanced analytics. And there is a performance tax Several of these document databases out there, including Mongo, are attempting to build sort of analytics around their JSON structures. Unfortunately, the case for those users is that there's still a significant performance tax around using a document unstructured database for analytics. So let's just sort of talk about how users typically do it today if they can't do their analytics in Mongo. So they have their operational side where they're using a transactional database like Mongo, and they have to ETL that data, perhaps flatten that data, move it to Snowflake, and then do analytics. Now, some may say, okay, this sounds great. I can do that. 2 super popular databases in the market. Sure, fine. The problem is when you start going and trying to attempt that challenge is that you have increased data transformations, naturally increased latencies because you got to get data from one database to the other database. More infrastructure. Each one of these blue circles that you see here is just additional infrastructure that you have to add. And there's a huge effort to then update and change queries, update and change data and the structures as you move sort of from the left to the right side of this diagram. So while in theory, it might sound like a good idea, in practice, there are easier ways to do this. So with that, I'd like to share with you our latest announcement on turbocharging your MongoDB applications. We have recently introduced SingleStore Kai for MongoDB to drive up to 1,000 times faster analytics on your MongoDB apps. Now, how do we do this? We just talked about how hard it is. Now, what we have released is a flexible API to allow you to not change your MongoDB apps at all, but leverage the power of SingleStore for the analytics. So we've got an API that allows you to just simply point at SingleStore from the app and a native way to bring the data over to SingleStore and then get those richer analytics very quickly. Developers like yourselves can continue to use any MongoDB open source tools or drivers that are out there. And like I mentioned earlier, there are hundreds, if not thousands of open source tools that have compatibility with Mongo. You can continue to use those because those rely on the Mongo API, and we have a Mongo API now. No data transformations are required, no changes to your MongoDB queries. And this is really specifically because SingleStore has such great native support for JSON as it is. So we accept the same JSON that Mongo does. We accept the same JSON queries as Mongo does, and our Mongo API handles that on its own, so you can bring that data over, and the Mongo API handles consuming and running those queries against the database. You can then also run machine learning algorithms, spatial analysis over that JSON document data, and really take advantage of all of the rich features of SingleStore around both transactions and analytics on your MongoDB data. So let's look at a few benchmarks here. We'll start with some simple queries. If I just take a count of events in a Mongo database, this may take 3,600 milliseconds, whereas this would take 4 milliseconds in SingleStore. And as you can see, as we go down this list, we're adding more and more complex queries. And these are benchmarks that we've run on very large sets of data. And as you can see, once we get to even more analytical queries, like what's the latest status reported on each version to device, or what's the average value reported on each location or online event, Mongo starts taking 10s or 20s, 30s of seconds, whereas SingleStore DB is still able to return these queries in milliseconds. This is again because our universal storage engine that treats JSON as a first-class citizen, but also is built on a column store that enables very fast analytics. So just in summary here on what you've seen in the last couple of slides, 100x faster analytics on JSON compared to MongoDB using SingleStore Kai, 0 code transformations, 0 data transformations, and most importantly, for the developers in the room, no application migration, which drastically reduces your time to market on getting analytics on your JSON data. Ultimately, this gives you the power of SQL and NoSQL in a single platform. So I just want to talk a bit more. I discussed earlier sort of how we were able to do this. We'll talk a little bit more about that now. So our universal storage again is built on a column store where we've taken our heritage of having a row store and built a lot of that capability of doing fast seeks, fast updates, inserts, deletes on a column store, that was traditionally in a row store into a column store. That gives us the ability to sort of handle transactions and analytics in the same place. What you also do is compress data at 75 to 80% on average. So what you'll see is, your 10, 20 terabytes of data is just single digit terabytes within SingleStore. This allows you to scale to very large amounts of data, analyze very large amounts of data. That could be not just JSON, but also relational and other types of unstructured data. One of the other recent releases in our sort of portfolio of JSON features has been 400x faster seeks on JSON columns. So previously, we didn't, similar to other column stores, did not support seeking on all transactions within the column store, but now we can seek directly into whatever segment within a column store that is holding the JSON object that you are looking to retrieve. That's a feature that we recently released called Seekable JSON, which makes analytics on JSON data just a lot faster, as you can see, 400x faster. And this is something that we co-developed alongside a customer recently that's been very, very beneficial to them. So happy to share more on this as well. So let's just quickly talk about the anatomy of SingleStore Kai. I'm sure many of you are interested in sort of how it works. If you have your Mongo shell or your tools, any sort of Mongo developer tools on the left side here, you can use the same connection string that you use for your MongoDB and connect directly to the SingleStore Kai API. We then convert that Mongo query to SQL, send it to the SingleStore core engine, output that, and the API returns it back to the user. It's that simple. It's about as simple as it sounds. So super straightforward and very easy to get started in our cloud trial. So one of the questions that we get often is, okay, great, you have an API for Mongo. Now, how do I actually get my data over to SingleStore to actually leverage this? So in cases like these where you perhaps love Mongo for your transactional workload, you're using it for your application, your developers love it, your application is performing great other than the analytics, what you can do is continue to use Mongo to be the operational database and SingleStore for the analytical engine. This is typically how our users get started with this feature. Again, no code changes, no migration. You have the MongoDB server, and we have native change data capture streams leveraging SingleStore pipelines to bring that data into our managed service. So I'll show you that here in a little bit, but you're able then to bring the data over from MongoDB into SingleStore and then run the analytics on that while also keeping Mongo there just for the operational side of the workload. So you get the best of both worlds in this. So you just select the collections that require the analytics. And again, I'll show you this in a notebook here in a few minutes. You select those collections, you replicate just the collections that you want to do analytics on, and then run the analytical queries faster against SingleStore DB. So in summary here, before we get into a demo, this is how you get the best of both worlds of both NoSQL as well as SQL. You get the schema flexibility and ease of NoSQL while you also get that fast support for JSON within SingleStore's universal storage. So with that, I will hop into a demo. So what you're seeing here is the SingleStore portal. A SingleStore Cloud Portal is something that you can get started with at any time, just going to portal.singlestore.com. At the end of this webinar, I'll also show you show you a link where you can get started with $600 in free credits using this trial. So when you get started in our trial, you'll see guides, you'll see the blog, the community, and various different resources for you to get started with SingleStore. My favorite resource, which you might also find interesting, is the Squirrelbot. This is actually built on our native generative AI capabilities to ask anything about SingleStore. So what I could do to just get started is tell me how I can migrate to SingleStore using SingleStore Kai. This is going to analyze documentation, GitHub, forums, all of our sources, and it'll tell you exactly how you can do this using SingleStore Workspaces, which is the compute, all of the Kai blogs that we have, all the release notes to the cloud, but really most importantly, a step-by-step a step-by-step tour of how to do that. Super awesome. You can continue. Of course, this thing has memory, so you can continue to ask questions and follow on if you have trouble in your trial. Now, to actually get into to the demonstration portion, what you'll find when you start your trial is a lot of different notebooks that are available to you as samples to get started with SingleStore. So you have getting started notebooks, you have image matching, movie recommendations, semantic search, which are all, again, sort of around our vector search capabilities and generative AI capabilities. But what we'll show you today, and what you also will have access to, is a Mongo side-by-side. So let's go ahead and pull up that workspace. What you'll also see here on the side is your ability to do SQL editing. You have a Mongo shell. You have all of your notebooks, personal notebooks, shared notebooks, and all the ability to do your collaboration. Let's just taking a moment here. While it's doing that, I'll also show you just sort of when you get started with your cloud workspace here. You'll see all of the details of the compute here. So I see I have a webinar workspace that is associated to this one is, I believe, 16 CPUs of compute, and all the databases that are attached to that. I have several different databases here attached to that. So I've got many different databases that can be tied to the workspaces that I create. So not sure why I'm getting a little bit, I might have a bit of an internet issue here. So maybe I'll just hit refresh and hopefully my internet gets back to normal. Let's see.
It wouldn't be a demo without a delay.
Yeah, most certainly. There's, it's it's really
and
funny.
Probably on that server, you have that technical class, which has been scheduled for today.
Yeah, we've got a bunch of folks in the room next to me that are also doing a lot of these demos. So perhaps that's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe what we do is we give this a second and we just kind of walk you through some sort of how you would edit within the SQL editor and SingleStore. This editor is here for you to do development, to test queries against SingleStore, and you can all you have to do is sort of select your workspace, which is your compute within SingleStore, and then your database, which is where all that data lives. Now, in order to actually spin up new compute, what you'll do is go to the plus sign here and select a compute size. What we have is this compute size that I'm working with right now is called S2. S2 is just a size. So we have smaller workspaces, an S1 and S0 and S00. And then we also have larger ones, S4, S8, S16, and going forward. So, and as you can see here, you have all this sort of ability to assess how much CPU you have, how much memory you have, how much cache you have, et cetera, on each of these. So just give me a moment. Hey, Marissa and Mike, do you want to maybe talk a bit about some of the sort of collaboration that we've done in the joint IBM and SingleStore go-to-market for the next couple of minutes while I figure out what's going on with my internet here and why it's not loading?
100%. Listen, first off, while we're resetting the demo from an IBM point of view, I represent the Americas for the data and AI business. I'm responsible for the relationships that we have with some of our database partners, of which SingleStore is absolutely one of my favorite. I think they're aligned well with the way that we actually go to market by putting the customer first. And that is something that's very important to us as we continue to progress in our relationship. We have had amazing opportunities that we have worked at customers, and they have seen unbelievable results. For a go-to-market partner, this company actually gets it. They understand how to make customers successful. And I think that's why we've really leaned into the organization. IBM itself has invested in this company, and we're going to continue to invest as we, allow our customers and them to get together with us, and we actually try to solve really hard business problems. And those are the ones we really look for, the ones where real-time analytics have SLAs that aren't being met, have real challenges that need to be met. And we just did this with a major organization. They may talk about it in a little bit here, but they were having some issues pulling information together. It was running in and around 8 hours or so a day. If it failed, there were times where they couldn't rerun the data. When asked to get involved, this organization not only was challenged with 1.5 billion rows, they actually delivered 3.5 billion rows of ingest in about 7 minutes. So it was a phenomenal talk story. And I hope, again, I'm not sure if the organization here has it, but while I've done that, how we doing at this point?
Awesome.
All right.
Thanks, Mike. I am back. So I just had to open, I think something was up with my browser cache, but I opened in an incognito window and I'm good to go. So here is what we call a single store notebook. So in our cloud platform, you may be familiar with Jupyter notebooks. We have notebooks natively within our cloud platform. So again, just back to the story sort of around our Mongo API. This is something that you'll have access to yourself within our notebooks when you spin up a trial of SingleStore. What you'll learn in this notebook is just how to install all those libraries that are necessary for the demonstration around using SingleStore Kai, using Python. You'll connect to Atlas, connect to SingleStore Kai, and do a benchmark comparison of analytical queries. Some of the analytical queries that we'll do here are document counts, product quantity sold, average customer sat, top 10 product sales, standard things that you would do in inventory and sales-oriented demo. So the first thing I have to do here is just install PyMongo, which you may be familiar with if you're a Mongo user and you use Python. I'm going to drop my database called new transactions. And then I'm just going to import some more Python libraries here, things like NumPy, like Pandas, like Plotly. Again, things that you may be familiar with if you're a Python user. So into the meat of it, what we're going to first do is connect to MongoDB Atlas. We're using a shared tier on the backend for Atlas, and then we'll connect at the same time to a SingleStore DB Mongo endpoint. So we'll do that. And then next I have to select the workspace that I want to use. The next step is one of the most important steps, which is something that we discussed in the presentation, which is actually copying that data over from Atlas to SingleStore. I want to emphasize the ease of use here. As you can see, I have 6 lines of Python code that I'm using to get a bunch of collections from a MongoDB database. So super simple to do. People often, will talk about how complex it is to get data, out of one base into a database into another. We've simplified that for you in this sample. We simplified that for you in our implementations as well, to move that over while also not having to change anything in the application. So just do a count of these documents. As you can see, I've got about 150,000 documents in my in SingleStore now. So let's just start by doing document counts. I'm going to run my document count query 10 times, and I'm going to do that using a for loop here. And what you'll see in 1 second that executed, that we have the same amount of documents in SingleStore and in MongoDB. It's 147,000. But in those 10 iterations, Mongo took a significantly longer to run those queries than SingleStore did. So SingleStore took 0.04 of a second, and Mongo took orders of magnitude longer to just do a simple document count. Now, if I go to product quantity sold, I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm going to just do a total, this is a fairly straightforward query in Mongo. I'm going to run it at several iterations. And again, I'm doing this all in my notebook. Don't have to write SQL. I just use whatever development language I'm familiar with or I'm happy with. And you can see with this one, the Mongo execution gets a little bit better over time, but still significantly longer than what it's taking to do in SingleStore. Again, same result across both databases, but taking significantly longer in Mongo, and SingleStore just doing these analytics much faster. I'll run my average customer satisfaction query. So as you can see, we're getting a little bit more complex in the queries that we're running. Still, fairly straightforward. What's interesting here is that Mongo is not only taking longer than SingleStore, but also has more variability. When you're building applications for your customers, as many of you likely know, the key here that you want is to have this consistency and experience for your customers. And unfortunately, that's not what we're getting out of these runs in Mongo, but we're getting that in SingleStore. So I'll run a few more queries here, and of course, you can bring in your own data and do your own sort of tests around your MongoDB or just general document data that you have that may be more complex than this, or may look similar to this, using the same samples that we have. So the point is here, bring your own data. We have the change data capture tool for you to bring your data from Mongo and just leverage the Mongo API from whatever developer tool that you have. If you're also interested, we have that bot that I showed you earlier when we entered the portal. You can use the same thing to ask questions of your data here too. So perhaps if I wanted to, I tell it to ask, give me my sales per store for my top 10 stores. It'll generate the SQL, and then after it generates the SQL, it will then paste that in my cell, and I can also run it. So super straightforward to do here, and very easy to compare how things work in your existing Mongo, as well as how things work in your existing or in your new SingleStore trial. So with that, I'm going to show you just one more thing. We showed you notebooks. I talked a little bit earlier about generative AI, and I think it would be appropriate to just show you another example that you can play around with in our portal. I've got a generative AI notebook here that's really gonna walk through how you can enable generative AI using SingleStore. Here I'm using LangChain. There are several different frameworks out there for AI. We're also partnering very closely with IBM on watsonx. So just going to show you a little bit about how you can enable generative AI using SingleStore. So the first thing that we're going to do is actually just build an example of how you can chat over documents using SingleStore DB. So what I'm going to do is fetch a document. It's just a text file. I'm going to chunk that, make embeddings, vectorize those embeddings, and then store them in a table within SingleStore. So, I'm going to just take a public document that I have here. That is the State of the Union address, most recent one. That's a text file. As you can see here, I've highlighted and sort of circling that here. What I can do is just take that using an API key, pull that down from GitHub. And then what I'm going to do is just, since many of you are in the financial services industry, I'm just going to ask it, what did the president say about finance? Very quickly, I've taken all of that vectorized data from PDFs, and like I said, took those embeddings, vectorized them. They're stored in SingleStore now, and now I can answer a question of what the president said about finance in the State of the Union address. Within seconds, I'm getting response from my database. So very cool application of AI. And what we're really hearing from our customers right now is, jointly along with IBM, is that people want to build ChatGPT-like apps and AI apps over their private data, right? So we have a public document here but just envision how you could do this with your documents, especially in the financial services industry. Maybe you have contracts or you have checks that you want to do, image recognition or comparisons on. Various different use cases in the financial services industry for API for AI that we, along with IBM, can help you enable. I'm just going to do another really cool one here, where I'm just going to load in some data, which is a TPCH data set. You might be familiar with that. And I'm actually just going to tell it, write a single store query that gives me the highest paying customers per query, include how much they've spent and the nation that they're from. So this is going to run an entire thought and action process where it says, I think I should use this table. It makes some observations and it has some thoughts around what it should query. It creates the tables, it pulls the rows, and it does all of this, not just giving me the answer, but it gives me all the thought process around it, which it culminates ultimately in saying the highest paying customers per country are this customer in this nation with this amount within my TPCH data set. And you can see it did all of that in seconds. So we have further examples, which I would encourage you to take a look at in the future around using SingleStore Kai for AI message history. Perhaps your AI message history is sitting in Mongo, and you want to leverage Kai for that AI message history that's sitting in Mongo. You can do that through a SingleStore notebook. So a lot of applications of Mongo for analytics that you heard today. A lot of applications of AI. So with that, we'll conclude the demo portion. I think the best way for you to sort of get started after this, I think my screen sharing paused. I'm not sure how my screen share paused here, but I will try to.
You're all set now.
See, it's a bit odd. Let me try one more time just to share this slide. Perfect, cool. Yeah, so with that, like I mentioned earlier, you can start today using SingleStore Kai at singlestore.com/cloud-trial/Kai. This allows you to get up to $600 in free credits. So with that, I think we can open it up to questions. Marissa, if there are no questions, perhaps we wrap it up.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Sarang. Appreciate it. So thank you everyone for joining the webinar today. I'll send you a follow-up with some more information based on what we discussed today, and then also include the free trial information. And if you would like to schedule any deep dive follow-ups on the MongoDB API or anything else around SingleStore, happy to do so further in the conversation. And then also any other questions, please feel free to send me a chat on it or put it in the chat here. But if not, then we'll wrap everything up. And thank you for your time and appreciate it. And hope you got more information on the MongoDB API with SingleStore. All right, well, have a great day. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Sarang.
Bye now. Take care, team.